René Ashford, a 9-year-old with a shotgun, ready to leave, choosing to live, and win. Firstly, I would like to thank my friend and expert, Alan Brosnan, for making this amazing episode happen. This week, I had the honour of speaking with René Ashford, a victor of years of abuse. René's mission and mandate is clear: to save lives. Repeated sexual assaults, multiple violent relationships, and addictions to drugs and alcohol led René down a dark and lonely path, which included multiple suicide attempts, the earliest when she was only 9 years old. René is now the Australian ambassador for the National Association of Adult Child Abuse Survivors, and a most amazing human who has gone on to become an inspiring Australian author and public speaker, who has turned her harrowing experiences of child abuse into a powerful mission to educate and protect others. René's story is a powerful reminder that we can all play a part in protecting children and breaking the cycle of abuse. Her book, Battlescars Are Beautiful: From Victim to Victory, is a must-read for anyone seeking to understand and combat child abuse. In this episode, she offers practical advice on child safety, including teaching body boundaries, using correct anatomical terms, and empowering children to say no. René addresses breaking the silence around abuse, the importance of support networks, and her ongoing work helping others heal. The episode is a moving call to action for education, transparency, and protecting vulnerable children. We talked about the topics of the power of transparency, early education and body safety, recognizing abuse, empowering children, breaking the cycle, practical actions for parents and caregivers, teaching body safety early, using correct terminology, respecting consent, vigilant parenting. We also mentioned famous personalities in this space, such as former 22 SAS, that's the Special Air Service soldier, Big Phil Campion, former West Australian police officer, Kirsty McPhee, and former guests on the show, including world record holder Brooke McIntosh, and Delta Force commander and author of The Common Sense Way, Pete Blaber. I hope you find this episode as enlightening and inspiring as I did. Let's continue to have these important conversations and work together to create a safer world for our children. In René's words, survivors are not defined by their experiences, nor are they limited by them. Anyone can rise beyond adversity with the right mindset, and it begins with a decision to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. Her journey can be discovered and understood in her incredibly powerful and inspiring book, which has received rave reviews and is endorsed by mental health professionals, counselors, war veterans, and law enforcement. René's story is gripping, raw, and profound, and yet another reminder of the power of the human spirit to overcome life's greatest challenges. You can connect with René on the show notes below. Click on those, please. Instagram, René Ashford 01. Email her direct, which is amazing. Her email is literally right there below, renémichelle1975@gmail.com. And her book, the book link is below as well. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert, and the How Not to Die guy. And you're listening to my podcast, Straight Talk Mind and Muscle. This episode is proudly sponsored by these guys, State and State for Women, because aging is inevitable, but how we age is a choice. State is the ultimate daily formula for optimal health and longevity, backed by clinically proven 100% natural ingredients that's designed to support hormone health, stress resilience, energy, and performance. And I use it every single day. And a special thanks also to my new sponsor, Michael Mason and the Mason Survival Protocol. Links to both of these are in the show notes below. Catch all my past episodes and resources in the notes as well. Thanks for watching. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest this morning. Finally, we got an Australian in Australia, René Ashford. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Damien.
Look, I can do a bit of an intro here, but I have to be honest, I'm a little bit lost on this show. So it's going to be really interesting because you have such a story, and I really mean that. So first off, thank you to Alan Brosnan for introducing you and I both. He's a great man, and when he says you should talk to this person, I took that on board immediately. And so here you are, René. You're an author, which is amazing. I mean that so much. I've had so many different people on the show that have gone on to become authors. It's like an Everest to me. Um,
Mm.
one step at a time would be the way to take it. But your book, Battle Scars, are beautiful. Uh, from victim to victory in 2000. Wow, that is just amazing what you have gone through. Your bio that you sent through. Gosh, I read that last night and I was just floored. And that's why it's going to be so interesting for me with this show, where to start. You've gone through so much, but the thing that stood out for me in this bio, and your bio is amazing, every sentence, was your mission. And we appear to have the same mission, is to save lives.
Mm.
Uh,
Definitely.
Brozzo's in mine. So for the listeners out there, Alan Brosnan, years in New Zealand SAS and gone on to teach a lot of units and operators in the world. Our job in New Zealand SAS, him as a badge operator, me in the commando role, was to rescue the hostages. People
Mm.
think we're there to go and wear black and go and blow doors and shoot people in the face, and it is, but we're there to rescue the hostages. So the things can change. But you have got a mission to save lives. What you've been through in your life, you saved your own, which is the first step and amazing. I think you're going on to teach people how to do that. So I don't think I can introduce you as well as you could talk about what you do. How do you,
Mm.
it's such a loaded question, Renee. How do you save
Yeah.
lives?
I save lives by being real, by being very transparent and having the conversations nobody wants to have. So, as somebody who has gone through child abuse from a very, very young age and grew up surrounded by a lack of safety from the very people I was supposed to trust, that children are supposed to trust. So, caregivers, those that are put in positions of authority over us, so teachers, parents, adults, coaches, these were the people that preyed on me as a child. And unfortunately, because I had a alcoholic mother who was very absent, not just emotionally, but physically absent, she didn't have the capacity to look out for those red flags that you teach so well about. And because she was so consumed by her own pain and her own journey, she completely took her hands off the wheel as far as being a parent that protected her child. And a lot of the men that came into our home to sexually abuse me, to physically abuse me, she personally brought into the home and then left them there with me. She would go to work on a Monday morning and there would be a man in the room next to me. And I'm 9 years old.
Wow.
So these are the things that happen, not just when I was a kid in the 80s, but are happening today. And people aren't talking about it because it's not sexy, it's not attractive, doesn't have a lot of money behind it. It is one of those things that still makes people squirm. And there is a lot of stigma around there that stops boys, girls, men, and women from sharing their stories. And that keeps people in the firing line for this to continue to happen.
Thank you for summarizing such a broad subject quite well. Some things that stood out for me there is, yes, it's daunting for us. We like to put our head in the sand. We see a post on social media about, I've had people in this show speak about it, and even I don't want to know about it to some regard. There's a cognitive dissonance there. So how
Yes.
about we direct it to what action can
Mm.
a child take? What action can a teenager take? And we've had Brooke McIntosh on the show, who was gone through a bit of what you've gone through 3 times at different ages. Christy McVie, a former police officer, speaks about child's essay here, and she's very good at that. But let's talk about action, because
Mm.
I feel quite impotent
Mhm.
as experienced operator who knows how to rescue people when I see these things on social media or on TV. So straight in, Renee, you've been through it. You're in the trenches. You're an expert.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the different ages. Let's say you're 9 years old. What
Yeah.
action can that person take? What tools do you think that person would would do well with, and maybe an older, maybe
Mm.
around the teenage years. Could you talk to that, please?
Yeah, definitely. So, child and body safety is something that I used to teach on when my book came out because I had a lot of parents, I had a lot of brothers and sisters, and so not the person themselves that was abused, but people around them in their immediate world saying, "Hey, we missed this. How did we miss it? How did it go on
Mm.
for so long?" Because there's a lot of shame and guilt there
Yep.
from people that just missed it. And I don't know if, people looking back on the way that children were raised, it's changed, right, from generation to generation. The way I raised my children was very, very different based on what I had gone through. And so, for people that are just unaware of how prevalent this is in our homes and how it's the very people we trust that we feel safe around, you see, stranger danger did not do us any favors.
No.
Stranger danger made us think it was going to be this guy in a cloak and a funny hat jumping out of the bushes and grabbing our kids. It's the exact opposite of that. It's the people that we invite into our homes that we look up to and that we trust. So I used to say to parents, little things like children running around naked when they're 2, 3, 4 years old at home. Oh, it's cute when it might be mum and dad, but when the visitors come over, it's no longer cute or appropriate. Some people would say, "Oh, my children stay at auntie and uncle's house every weekend so that we go out. That's a time for them to share, time with their family." It absolutely is. But what things are you putting into place for all the people that come to their house on the weekend? You can't manage that because you're not there. So, child safety starts at a very young age. So, when my daughter was 2 years old, I taught her how to dry herself. Now, some people think, are going to listen to this and go, "This is crazy." But my children are 23 and 20 now and have never been abused. They're the first two children in our entire line of family that hasn't been
Oh, wow.
because I went over and above. Because what that does, Damien, is it teaches their body what is safe. So if
Mm.
mum and dad are educating a child from a young age and saying, "Hey, babe, you can actually do this. Let me show you how," and then praise that child at bath time and getting dress time, that only this child now knows how to look after his body and dry it and just do the practical things, then it's almost like the body has this safeguarding alarm bell, which you would know about very
Mhm.
well, that when auntie or uncle or someone that is not safe to this child then touches them in an area that not even mummy and daddy now access or touch on a regular occasion, a physical alarm bell goes off in their body where they just know, hang on, this is not right because they're reacting to something that's never happened. If everybody tickles and touches and grabs and wipes and that alarm bell no longer goes off. It's desensitized, right?
Mm.
So teaching a child from a young age, a very young age, that this is actually your body. Nobody else's. Nobody else gets to touch this area. This is just yours. It intrinsically helps their physiology respond to things that are not normal. So that starts really young. It also starts with calling body parts what they are,
Mm.
calling areas of the body cute little names because it makes people uncomfortable. A penis is a penis, a vagina is a vagina. So that when that area is touched and they go to mum and dad and say, "Hey, somebody touched my vagina," there's no mucking around with what was touched. But when they say, "Oh, my front bottom, back bottom, pee pee, wee wee," things get lost in translation.
Wow.
And a child is then armed with the right words so that they know straight away. So my alarm bell's gone off. I know what it is. And now I can go and tell mum and dad, so and so by name touched me on my vagina or penis or anus. And, straight away you're going to know, hang on, that wasn't an accident because those areas are not touched by accident.
Wow. That's clarity. Gosh, is the word that just jumps out in my mind from what you said. And what a great thing you've done by empowering their body with
Hmm.
what's right and wrong. Gosh, that's so clever. And coming from your background, I can see why you went that route. it's probably not a way that people teach body safety and body
Mm-hmm.
awareness. My boy has gone through that class, I think, at year three. I remember
Mm-hmm.
it being sent out to us to the curriculum. The lesson was going to be taught was prior to the
Mm.
parents. That's great, but that's
Yep.
real clarity there. And
Mm.
because it's so foreign to that child, hang on, this is not correct. They would then
Mhm.
tell you straight away because it's a weird thing, right?
That's right. That you don't see what happened to me, Damien, was I started thinking, did that happen? Maybe it was me. Am
Right.
I overreacting? Because
Right.
everybody hugs and tickles me and dresses me and baths me and dries me.
Mm,
Every auntie, every uncle. And we were also forced to hug and kiss our aunties and uncles, even if we didn't feel comfortable or want to. The minute I started saying no, I was told off because I was naughty and disrespectful. This
yeah.
is other children. The other thing with children. We need to empower them to have the right over this. At any point in time, if they don't feel comfortable doing something, we can't say, oh, that's naughty or that's wrong. Consent
Mhm.
is a real thing. If a child doesn't feel comfortable, allow them to actually say no. And you know what? Give them a high five. If that auntie or uncle is upset, it's more about the auntie and the uncle, right, than the child. Because why is an adult upset because a child doesn't want to hug and kiss them all the time? I'd be more concerned about that reason than
Yes.
the child that says, I just don't want to do that. And, they should be encouraged to do that and praised for that because they're verbalizing how they feel. They're not being shut down. And the more we empower our children that their voice matters, I always said to my children, your voice matters. Now they had to say it in a polite way, and we shape that as time goes on. But as parents, we've got a responsibility. If something makes you uncomfortable, tough luck, you shouldn't have had kids, right? Because there's going to be many moments. And that's what I used to say, because it's a cultural thing. A lot of people, especially, I knew a lot of Greeks and Italians growing up. And when they started contacting me and said, hey, like I would be told off in my family if I said to uncle and auntie, hey, you can't bath my child. I said, you know what? Make them a part of the process, empower them and say, this is nothing against you personally. We're setting up our child to win in life. And we're arming them with tools that are going to keep them safe. And you're a valued part of our family. So how about we teach you how to do it as well? So we're all on the same page. We can all do it with our kids, and our kids are going to have the best chance in life. If there's a grown up or a part of the family that's offended by that, I wouldn't be too concerned about that either. Again, it's more about the adult than it is the child.
Interesting way of contextualizing the family there.
Mm.
I want to direct this for the listeners again. Actions. This is what I'm terrible at doing is teaching actions. It's great to talk about these things, but we got to get past that talk, which you're doing. So a couple of things jumped out. One, I think the stat, and please get it right for me because it'll be wrong, but I know it's above 90% of sexual assault in the home is done by a male who's not a blood father of that person. Is that a correct statistic?
Look, to be honest, Damien, that's changing all the time because the problem with these statistics is that there's so much unreporting going on.
Yes, of
So
course.
at the moment in Australia, the rate of non-reported, I have to be very clear about that, non-reported abuse is 92%.
Wow.
So is 7 to 8%, because that fluctuates a little bit by a percent or two.
Yeah.
If 8% of reports is all we're capturing,
Gosh.
we've got some serious work to do.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns. Like I think from what I read, then it was 92% of this sexual assault is by males is by a person who's not that male's that child's father. So the person, as you said, your mum brought a male into the house suddenly sitting
Yep.
next to you at 9 years old. The other
Yep.
thing I thought about there, and that was to give context for the listeners,
Yeah,
is
sure.
it takes a village to raise a child.
Does.
Yes, but we don't live in a goddamn village anymore because that
Mm.
scumbag will be beaten
Yeah.
to death. Let's be
Yeah.
the word is
Mm.
ostracized. They're kicked out of the village, so therefore they can't survive. But really, let's be real, they're not going to be around. So we don't get to have the all those people touch our kids like they probably appropriately could have back in the day. For instance, your baby be taken away from you for maybe a week or two after you've given birth, depending on which culture you were in. Uh, so we don't live in a village. So really clever description you've got there of those people around that baby. Do they have the right to see them, to bath them? Do they have that right? Because now they've got access and they're not supervised all the time like they are in a village.
Well, again, that's up to the parents, isn't it? So I went a little bit cray cray, my friends would say. My daughter, she wasn't allowed to have sleepovers at anyone's house until she was probably 14 years of age. Do you know why I did that though? We've got a responsibility to know our children because we can't know the person outside our home.
Mm,
Often we don't even know the person we're lying in bed with that night. Let's be really, really, really honest. We all come into the world with baggage. We all come into the world with pasts. And because of this shame and stigma around so many different behaviors, we keep a lot of that to ourselves. So for my daughter, I knew even when she was around that 13, 14 years old, she was quite naive about the world. She was
mm.
quite sheltered. She was a stubborn little thing at times, and she had a great spark to her. But I knew that if somebody did something to her that was unwanted, she wouldn't be strong enough yet to speak up. So it was my responsibility as a parent to continue to grow her and empower her and equip her with the language and the skills and the knowledge to get her to the point where she could advocate for herself.
Beautiful.
Now, I wasn't a fan favorite. But I would even say to her, look, I'll drop you off at that sleepover. I'll drop you off at that party. And I don't care if it's 3 a.m. that the rest of the girls go to sleep. I'll come and get you.
Yeah.
No questions asked. And the first time she agreed to that and went, oh, fine, okay. Do you know there was about 5 or 6 of us mothers lining up to pick our children up?
Wow.
Because there was other mothers that went, look, we know that this family, we know them from school, but we don't know them. We didn't want our kids to miss out because you don't want your kid to be that one kid that misses out. But we all employed a situation or actions that we knew we were comfortable with and our child would be coming home safely. And looking back, my daughter says to me now, it was such a strategic thing you did, and it frustrated me at the time. But to look back now and know that I actually didn't miss out on anything. And two, I've been safe this entire time. She said, I'm going to be doing that to my own children. She goes, it just makes sense. So again, it brings you back to parents not wanting to be that parent, parents not wanting to be disliked by their kids. You know what? Tough luck. You've got an entire lifetime of being your child's friend, but up until they're 18 or while they're under your roof, you have a responsibility to keep them safe. End of story. And that will involve difficult conversations, like it or not.
I love that you said that. I say to my boy just about every day, I've only got 2 jobs, or I'll ask him. My 2 jobs are to keep him safe and help him grow. And help him grow might be being his friend at the time. Keeping him safe might be teaching him body awareness, or teaching that weird guy, or teaching him how to cook on the gas stove. But it's those 2 things. Amazing that you said that. Context again for listeners. You said it makes sense. I was lucky enough to interview Pete Blaber. He was one of the commanding officers of Delta Force, and he's got a book called The Common Sense Way. And one of the things he says about common sense, Renee, is say it out loud. So here's something. I'm going to go and drop my 11-year-old girl off. Haven't got one, by the way. I'm pretending at a 45-year-old man's house with 5 other. We'll call that. Actually, we'll go 13-year-old girls, because 13 is prepubescent or pubescent. Yep. That doesn't make sense to stay overnight. That doesn't make sense when you say it out loud, does it?
Of course not.
Now, what happened in that situation, listeners and viewers, is that man made a bunch of smoothies for those girls, and he put sleeping pills in them, and one of those girls refused and rang the mum, and the parents went around, and those girls were unconscious, and that girl saved their lives in some way. So it doesn't make sense once you say it out loud, and that's such a good thing you did. I'm glad that those other parents managed to realize that. What I'd like to do again, moving for action, because I need to paint the picture, because all of the other podcasts, all of the other social media things before this haven't worked, Renee.
No.
So let's paint the picture for the listeners and viewers.
Mm.
We talked about body awareness, talked about action. I'm sorry to ask you this, but what the hell happens to you? What happened to you when that didn't work? What did you
Mm.
go through? So the listeners and viewers need to know
Yeah.
what that effect was when
Yeah.
this guy had
Mm.
access to you at 9 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was probably, to be honest with you, and just to get, again, I'm all about honesty and transparency. Hence the reason for the book, because holding back doesn't save anyone. I think by the time I was 12 years old, I'd been sexually assaulted over 20 times by a range of men, of varying degrees. Now, some of these were
Wow.
family members or relatives that were now family members. So my sister's husbands. I've got four sisters. Um, like I laugh about it because who I am today is a miracle for starters.
Yeah.
I tried to take my life several times. The
Mm.
first time I thought about it, I was 9, after the first time it happened.
No
I
way.
remember getting my father's shotgun. We lived on a country farm, and my dad used to have his rifles and shotguns leaning up against a wall. I didn't know anything about ammunition. I'd never held one, but I knew they were there. Now, at 9, you don't know really what death is all about, but you do know pain. So my body was in pain. My mind was in pain. I wanted that pain to stop. I didn't know how to make it stop
Mm.
because these were adults that everybody else thought were fantastic.
Mm.
So I grabbed a gun, and the only reason I wasn't able to harm myself is it was too big. I couldn't balance
Couldn't
this
reach
thing.
it. Yeah.
And then I'm trying to turn this thing around. And after about 10 minutes, I was like, well, this is just not going to happen. But for a 9-year-old child to want to kill themselves, to commit suicide, I didn't know what that meant, but I did know I couldn't endure this time and time again. And yet I endured it until I was 16 years of age and left the home. So from 9 when it started up until 16, that abuse never stopped. It just became different people. The scars that left behind emotionally, I was so dysfunctional. I had no awareness of what safety was. I thought every man bashed the crap out of their partner. I thought that was adults because my mum's partners were very violent. On any given night, I would be halfway through my dinner and that plate would be picked up and hurled across the room.
Mm.
And my mum and I would just sit there and sort of go, okay, what's next? So being hyper vigilant my whole life made me sick in so many ways. Emotionally, of course, but my mental health was so bad that I started self-harming at 12
Mm.
because the embarrassment and fear that I lived with every day, we moved a lot as well. As soon as I'd go to a new school, I remember one day I started wetting my pants, having no control over my bladder. Now, the
Wow.
trigger was a teacher yelled at me, a male teacher just raised his voice. I had my head down and I was doing my work.
Mm.
Next minute, he has yelled, and this thing has happened. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, well, this is new. And being the new kid, how do you deal with that? So I was bullied.
Yeah.
So every single thing was just this massive ripple effect. So I'm every day thinking about suicide. I'm cutting my body. I'm punching myself in the face. I'm getting razor blades off my whoever was the current man in the house's razor and cutting my legs and my arms because I just loathed this thing and was in constant pain. And every single day for me was, how do I just stop this thing?
That's, uh, I mean, I said at the start, I didn't know how to introduce
Mm.
this. And I've done this
Mm.
for a long time. I've run this
Mm.
show for 8 years and interviewed some really diverse people, but that is just so much to take on board. And that's why I asked you that question. So thank you for
Mm.
answering it so much.
Yeah.
But that's,
Trauma is so multi-layered, right?
it
And
is.
then every relationship I had after that was a domestic abuse relationship. Then I
Yeah.
went down the drug road. Then I went down the alcohol road. So when I looked back on it, when I had to write this book and really put into order I guess, the events that occurred, what was really clear to me was just the lack of safety. The world was not a safe place. The world had nobody, and this is the very blanket mindset I had. The world was not a
Mm,
safe place. Nobody was safe, man or woman. Everybody who is nice to me wants to take something from me. And then the very last thing was, and you must give it to him because, or her, because you don't matter.
mm.
You're a tool for other people's pleasure.
It's prostitution. You've been prostituted, but not for profit, just
Mm.
for what? What is the? Is that through neglect?
100%. Yeah. And I never really put neglect as part of this until I sat down with my publisher for the first time and he got my thoughts, like a
Yeah.
chapter or two and sent it off to his publishing team. And
Mm.
when they came back for like a suggestion for the blurb for the book, that was the first time I saw the word neglect.
Oh
Now,
wow.
I'm in my 40s here and I'm like, oh, yeah, neglect. Like, so the awareness and the learning of what we go through in life, it never stops. I'd never looked at it that way. I'd always known the abuse word because that's the word that's thrown around. But
Mm,
neglect, you advocating your duty as a parent and putting your children in situations where this can happen over and over and over again, as my mum did, because she didn't want to know. The men became her plaything, not the child to
mm.
protect. So her duty became about something completely different, and it allowed this to continue. So the moment we don't take our roles in life and society seriously, just as a flippin' caring human being to start with, but as a parent, 100% that's neglect, and 100% you're killing your child in multiple ways, whether it be emotionally or potentially physically.
I want to ask the question, did they go to jail? What the hell happened to these bad people?
Mm,
I'm not going to, Renee, because that's
mm,
irrelevant. What I
mm,
do want to ask, we're all about, well, I'm all about action at least, and you are as well, which is great,
mm,
is you went on to become a mum.
mm,
Now, I was raised very differently than I raised we co-raised our boy. Um, and I'm making sure that I do things differently. They weren't wrong. They were just different. The kid was essentially, hey, don't want to be seen but not heard. Um, what did you go into motherhood with differently
mm.
than you went through? Because classically, all SA or many SA survivors carry on that cycle. So, what changed in your brain to become a good mother? Because clearly you are,
Yeah.
because your kids came out the other side so well. So, how did you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, look, that was definitely a journey. The father of my children is no longer in our lives, my ex-husband. He was very narcissistic, which of course I missed those flags, didn't I? So that was 14 years of narcissistic abuse, financial and coercive control. We have language for it now. We didn't back then.
Mm,
And the thing for me was, as soon as I fell pregnant with my daughter Cassidy, it was like this fuse went off in me. I would have walked across hot coals and swam through shark-infested waters for this kid. I remember looking down on her, and I talk about this a lot, but it really was a clarity moment for me, and I'll never forget it. I looked down at her one day when it was just her and I as a newborn, and in my mind, somewhere, I decided you will never go through what I went through, and your life must be different. It must be different. I'll do everything I can to make it different. Now, I didn't know the hows, but I knew what I was determined and willing to do. And that
mm,
terrified me because never had I loved or felt love like that. I'd never felt connected to anything. All of a sudden, there was this overwhelming, intense connection to this little person that I felt completely responsible for. That did two things. Like I said, it ignited something in me that went, I need to learn how to do this. It
mm,
also ignited in me a deep despair and sadness that I hadn't felt before, that my mum didn't have that same feeling about me.
Mm.
So it was I was on this two different, very contrasting journeys there, but my focus was on my baby girl. So I sort of locked the other emotion away. And believe it or not, for the first year or so, I really stumbled because the relationship with my ex-husband was very uncomfortable, very abusive, oh, every up and down you can imagine. And he instantly became jealous of the bond that I had with this little person.
Mm.
So that put a wedge in between he and I. So he amped up his behavior. And when she was two, Damien, I got to a point where I thought, okay, this is not working. He was smoking a lot of marijuana. Obviously, I had stopped everything that I was doing in the past. I'd been an addict and an alcoholic for many, many years. The minute I found out I was pregnant, gone, just fell off me, had no desire. So we were on different paths.
Mm.
But again, it was a fear because I was like, how do I do this? I was isolated because I didn't want anything to do with my family. I wasn't
Mm.
involved with them. I distanced myself from quite a young age from them. And I basically, out of desperation, opened the phone book, found a local church because I had tried every drug, every alcoholic drink, every type of meditation behavior, Eastern philosophy, like looked into everything and nothing sort of really grabbed hold for me. And I just stumbled into a local church that day. And on that day, Damien, people were up there talking about childhood sexual abuse.
Oh my God.
People were on the platform sharing stories while they stood beside their partners, and some of them had children. They were successful business owners. Some were that they were all thriving. That was
Mm.
the thing that got me. And they were sharing their story openly about where they were to where they are now. And people, I looked around because all of a sudden I was like, no, shush,
Mhm.
don't talk about it. We don't talk about that. And I was squirming in my seat. I would have probably left if there wasn't so many people there that day.
Mm.
And when I looked around the room, people were applauding, people were crying, people were celebrating their story. They weren't saying, oh my gosh, you're disgusting and looking
Mm.
uncomfortable. It was quite the opposite. Now, my ex-husband had always said, oh, it's probably your fault. Maybe for this pattern to continue, obviously it was you. So that in itself, like, maybe was it me? You continually re-victimize yourself. But in that moment, I went, have I got this wrong? Have I been wrong all this time? And there's more to this than I thought. And I've been in the church ever since.
Wow.
They taught me how to parent. They took me under their wing and said, how can we help you? And I went, no one's ever asked me that question. I didn't know how to respond, Damien. I just sort of sat
Mm.
there like, I don't know. They taught me what a boundary was. They taught me the power of saying no. They taught me what assertiveness versus being rude was because I hated conflict. So I was a people pleaser. And they were like, no, you have the right to govern your own decisions. This was like mind-blowing stuff,
Yeah.
like nothing I'd ever heard before. And they taught me value in myself. They helped me heal. They helped me realize that I wasn't less than because of what had been done to me. And they took Cassidy under their wing and taught me how to mother her in a way that was healthy because I was afraid of her. She reflected all of my inadequacies back at me. I loved her, but I also didn't know how to keep her safe in the way that I knew I needed. They taught me all of that.
Wow. Normally, I have a thought process after a guest answers a question, but that's just mind blowing. Um, how did you feel safe for them to take Cassidy under their wing?
Yeah, I was always there for starters. So they started
So you
inviting me
really
to
learned
hang
by
out.
watching.
Oh, 100%. The way that they spoke to her, but you know what it was though, too? More so it was the way they spoke to me. I'd never had family that I felt safe with. These people
Mm.
became my family. So these little old ladies became my grandmas,
Yeah.
and they were so kind. They didn't look at my deficiency as a weakness or a failure. They went, And they didn't know anything yet. I still haven't shared my story with a soul at this point.
Mm,
26, 27 by that point, new baby, still nobody knows my shame. So when they're pouring all this value into me, there's still a part of my mind that's saying, oh, but if they knew the things that I've done. But then they started to say things like, hey, this is what I went through. So storytelling, which
mm.
is why I do what I do now, started to change my life, which then started to change my daughter's life, which has changed everything around me since. So I learned the value of being transparent and sharing your story.
It's interesting because that is part of where I was going. Is one of the first. It's the third line of what I wrote down. I don't write down many notes preparing for a show. And what
Mm,
I've got here is Phil Campion. Phil Campion is a
mm,
British SAS, former SAS soldier, real tough guy, like a huge. He's
mm.
named Big Phil, and he was on. He's done lots of public speaking, and the first time he talked about his sexual abuse as a
Mm,
child was on stage. He was talking about
mhm.
probably talking about selection and special forces stuff to some wannabe
Yeah.
soldiers or troubled teens or schools or whatever, and it just blurted out. And I
Mm,
know that when you retell something, it takes it from the amygdala, from the trauma part of your brain, and turns it into a memory, into a
mhm,
file.
mhm.
So talking about in storytelling, I guess that's where it comes to my actual question is, um, how did he go on to
Mm.
open up about this and eventually write a book
Yeah.
and eventually do public speaking and
Yeah.
help others with this? What was the trigger? Was it that time in church? What was it that got you out there?
It was understanding that I could turn what has happened into something valuable.
Mm,
Not only was I turning it into valuable gold now as a parent, because I knew what to employ as a caregiver and as a protector of, I had a son not too many years later. So now I've got two children I need to protect in quite different ways, boy to girl, but still protection at the end of the day. I
mm,
was learning that I had within me knowledge and understanding of something that not many people had. I had an awareness. I all of a sudden developed discernment around certain people where I just felt that person is not my person. That's the only way I can sort of describe it. And later on down the track, I'd find out they were doing this or that, not abuse, but just things that were not aligned with my values. So
mm,
the more I got in tune with having a voice and understanding what was within me was actually valuable, that the gifts and the journey that I had been on, and I know not everybody has a faith, but by this stage I now do. For me, it was like there is so much more going on here than just me. Maybe I can use what's happened and explain to people it doesn't limit you, doesn't have to hold you back. You can succeed in despite of it. And I used it as fuel, Damien. I still didn't know what I was going to do with it. But strangely enough, I had a lady approach me in church one day and she said, look, there's a rehab that I think you would be great at volunteering in because you have this really easy way of talking and people are just sort of drawn to you.
mm,
That I was like, oh no, no, I'm not, because I still had a low self-esteem, very, very low. So I couldn't see any of this, I guess, skills yet. But I thought, yeah, I'd really like to volunteer. It's just me at home with the kids. They're now in playgroup and daycare. Yeah, I could do that a couple of hours a night. So I started volunteering a couple of hours a week, and all of a sudden, I was connecting with girls that have been through sexual abuse as children and are now drug addicts or teen parents or self-harming or have eating disorders based on, I could see what had happened to them. So every Sunday, I'd make a coffee with them, we'd sit under a tree for a few hours, and we would just talk. And I started just sharing little glimpses of what I'd been through, not in detail, just empathizing that, look, I get how you feel. It's like, and I started talking to them about how I would be fearful in certain situations, how I felt invisible, how I felt powerless. And I'd see these girls lean in
mm,
and their eyes widen up and they'd be like, oh, I've never told anyone that. How did you know that? And I would just say things like, because I've lived through it. I'm still battling every day, but I went through a lot of stuff as a kid and I'm learning now. So I was having these very honest conversations. And I started seeing these girls wanted to know more. They were starting to understand that, hang on, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that's been through this. I don't have to suffer in silence. So it was taking that masking tape off and saying, this is what is going to save not just you, but other people around you. And it's a gift, not a deficiency. That's when I started seeing the impact it was having on lives. And then that hunger just continued to grow and grow. And then it just developed from there. More and more people were sort of saying, hey, I see this on your life. The lady that invited me to volunteer there, they offered me a staff position within 3 months, became a qualified counsellor, put
Mhm.
myself through university, got a social science degree, specialised in community services and complex trauma. And it was all this self-learning. I thought it was to help others, but it was really, I think, a way of healing myself. And I just continued to do that. A publisher heard about my story through a mutual friend, rang me up and just said, why is your story going to be different from all the other abuse stories? And I said, look, to be honest, I don't really know how it will be different. I just know I don't want a sob story. I
Mm,
don't want a boohoo victim. That word to me sticks here because I'm not a victim. I got beyond that. I
mm,
was. I'm definitely not now. As soon as I started talking about it, I took the power away from that victim mindset.
mm.
And that grabbed his attention. That was the bit that he said, let's meet for coffee. So I just started sharing that. I said, I want to teach people how to empower their own minds, that their identity is not in the stuff. Their identity is way beyond that. It is not what happened to them. And it's not succeeding in spite of. I see it as I succeeded because of. If that stuff had not happened to me, I couldn't parent the way that I do. And my children and I are super close. I couldn't love my husband the way that I do. I wouldn't see the world and cry at a flippin' sunrise because I'm so grateful. I nearly lost my life that many times to suicide attempts and self-harming and risky behavior, but I'm here and life is damn good.
What's one thing someone listening to you would tell someone listening to this right now that is in that dark hole? And I've interviewed many people who've been in that hole. Right, they're in that dark hole right now, and they know that that shotgun is around the corner. What would you say to them, Renee, right now that can help them come out a
Yeah.
little bit?
Please, please, please reach out and talk to somebody that you can trust. Now, this is the key word, trust. When I thought I could trust my ex-husband with a little bit of my story, it came back to bite me because he made it that I was at fault.
Mm,
So choosing that person you trust is a very delicate process because he didn't have the skills to cope or have the capacity to cope with that information. It wasn't necessarily his fault. He just had never been through that and he had his own stuff going on. So maybe it's not a friend or a family member or your partner. Maybe it's an actual service that specializes. And you know what? Lifeline have got, and it's anonymous, Lifeline have got counselors 24/7 that they can reach out to. And that service is equipped to deal with that and can absolutely put them in contact with somebody that is the right person for that. We can't do this alone. Abuse keeps us silenced. Abuse has got all the power. The minute we reach out and bring somebody into that that can help us, it loses its power. That's
exactly.
when the journey to healing starts.
Thank you very much. I know I put you on the spot, but you've been there and done that. And that person, if they've got this far in their show, there's a reason. I have another direct question for you. If someone's in a domestic abuse, relationship abuse situation, what's your advice? And this is a former police officer asking this. I know what the answer that I and tried to do when I was a cop, and it worked once or twice. But what would you tell them? How the hell do they get out?
Yeah. And you know what? The main thing about abuse, particularly as an adult, it's what's going on in here.
Mm,
So now that I'm working for the Salvation Army here on the Sunshine Coast, I run programs. I run a property called House for Hope, and it's a drop in. So every single day I'm seeing women come to me or come in And they may not necessarily put their hand up straight away. They might be here for financial assistance or for a counseling referral.
Mm-hmm.
But I use that opportunity to just sort of have a bit of a chat. Sometimes I will watch the dynamics between them and the person they've walked into with. And this
Mm.
goes for men as well, because men are also victims of domestic abuse, let's be honest. And I just sort of watch and I'm like, hey, do you want a coffee? And I just sort of look for an in and see how they relate to me. And what I often do for these women or these men is start by saying, when they finally allow me to talk to them, is I share a little bit about how I got here. I'm like, how did you find us? And I only wish this was around when I was struggling. And I make it about me. I take the focus off them.
Mm.
I let them know that things happen because of other things we've been through, because we've been made to think that we don't matter and that we don't have power in situations and that we are all worth more, that nobody deserves that type of thing. Unless you truly believe you're worth better than your situation, it goes beyond hope of believing things can change. It has to start with you. It has to start with you wanting more than your current situation and being prepared to do whatever it takes to get out of it. A lot of people used to say to me, oh, but you went back, you keep going back to your ex-husband. And I said, yeah, he had all the money. I had no family. Because I had kept everything quiet, nobody knew I was suffering. If I
Mm.
had reached out to, and I know church is a scary place for some people, just as police is, scary for some people. But again, there are services that their whole process is to keep this quiet, to keep this anonymous because they know the risk. You have to get to a point where you're willing to go and tell somebody that knows how to deal with this. And these services are trained in how to do this in very sneaky ways,
Mm.
including myself. But you have to believe you're worth it. I had to get sick of my own BS to go, I will do whatever it takes now. Because until you get to that point, you'll continue to make excuses. And I don't mean this in a judgmental way at all. I just mean we reduce ourselves to being something of no value. You have to believe that you are worth more, and then you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to prove it to yourself and get out of that situation. And there's services now to help you do that. It's not easy and it doesn't happen all at once, but I had to develop an exit plan and it took 6 months of one step after another. But it started by telling a service that's specialized in how to get me out of there.
You've sort of come around to answer it almost directly, but if I get it more direct, someone's listening to this now because you said what you do.
Mm,
What advice would you give them when that person is realizing, listen to this, hey, I am in a domestic abuse situation.
mm.
That's it. That's as far as I got. What
Yep.
advice would you give that person thinking that
Mm.
right now, listen to us?
Yeah, if you don't have anybody in your life like I did, I didn't have anybody either. I looked up the leading domestic violence service in my area, depending on where your comfort level is,
Mm.
or a Salvation Army church. Now, I say Salvation Army not because I work for the Salvos. In my whole time in 25 years of community services, the Salvation Army is still the largest organization that has so many deep-rooted connections to other services. So
Mm.
we've got funding, we've got a budget, we've got people at all different levels of expertise and experience and heart that can put you in contact with someone to support you on this journey. So I get so many people that come in here with drug and alcohol addiction. I know where to put them in contact with, and I can be that advocate because sometimes we don't have the words to say when we're in it. But
Mm.
as if somebody can say, like you just said, hang on a minute, that's me, and I think I'm in this situation,
Mm.
call the Salvos or a DV service or walk into a local church, depending on what you're comfortable with, but you have to go to someone who has the capacity and the resources to get you the help that you need.
Thank you so much. I kind of smiled inside when you said you typed in, because I had a mum and a daughter, or the mum did it. She typed into Google "how not to die," and I popped up, and she came along with her daughter,
Right.
which was amazing. You know,
Yep.
the resources are out there online. They can help with that search there. But thank you so much um,
Mm,
for enunciating an escape path, the first
mm,
step to that escape path there, Renee. Look, I knew this was going to be such only just touching on parts of what you've gone through. Your book,
mm,
your autobiography is going to be amazing, and you talked about re-releasing it, which is great. You know, and Battlescars are beautiful, from victim to victory, and now with the context after speaking
mm,
to for an hour, the context that it really is victory. I can see that in
mm.
you, and I'm sure the listeners can hear that confidence. You We talked before. You're going to look at re-releasing it next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So we've got a different view now. So when it came out in 2019, I had a direction of just wanting to share my story. It opened the doors to podcasts and speaking opportunities, and we started a business of life coaching. But now, after COVID, we're living in a very different world.
Mm,
Speaking is not what it used to be, and obviously podcasts, they're so accessible. So I want to re-release the book next year purely because it's sold out.
great.
So all the ones that we printed have sold out since 2019. So I think you can only get it on Kindle now via Amazon. You can't actually get your hands on a paperback. So anyone who's got one, hang on to it.
Brazo showed me
He's
his copy that it was over there
he put
in
in the
America.
first order.
Yeah,
He was very proud about that. And yeah, so we want to release it next year, re-release it with a brand new cover and just a bit of a fresh outlook, and use that really just as a door opener. Because as we know now, credibility, and I know that you are big on credibility and integrity, I'm using that obviously to share my story, but for people all over the world, the easiest thing to do is say, "Hey, I believe in you. I'm going to send you or gift you a copy of my book." Because what it does, it starts that fire in them. If she can
mm,
do it, maybe I can do it. And the exciting thing is the amount of emails I've received from the most random places. I think the most, wait, was a lady in Kiev,
wow,
and she was 17 years old. And she said, I got my hands on your book. I've read it. My father has abused me. My stepfather has abused me all these years. And I'm in a very dark place. I've now started going back to church, but I'm working with a counseling service that are making me realize it was never my fault.
great.
So if I can do that by sharing all of this, that's the whole point. So yeah, next year, I can't wait. Once we do a bit more saving, because we've done everything ourselves, the book, the business, everything. So we're ready for a fresh start. And yeah, stay tuned. Watch this space.
I'm excited to see the success of it. We have the narrated show notes at the starts of the links, but listeners and viewers here, where is it just Amazon where they go for your book? Where do they?
Oh, look, I think they can get it on Amazon, Booktopia, like all the major online resources, even Kurong, which is a national Christian bookstore. But like I said, I think I've even bought copies of off eBay and re-gifted them out there to people. I used to leave them in just really random places like bus stops and cafes, and just trying to gift people with the message, I think. So just Google the book and you'll be able to find random places. If you can't get your hand on a paperback, you can get the free Google Books version, I think, which you can download the electronic version.
Wow, so many of my guests are that. Gosh, I don't know if I can come up with the word, but they're just there to help others. The
Mm.
Sergeant Major of the Army is going to become Sergeant Major of the Defence Force, Woodrow Moffat.
Mm.
His job is to help others, in his words,
Yeah.
in his quote. And you're the same, Renee. So thank you for what you're doing. I I did realize I only scratched the surface, and I would like to get back on for a sequel, and specifically to uh, I wrote down here probably how to raise kids without SA. But I'd love to get you on
Mm.
for a sequel if you're happy to come back and speak to that
Always,
more.
definitely.
Really looking forward to seeing the book come out more. And congratulations on you, on your victory. Congratulations on mum mode and raising those kids, and thank you for what you're doing. It's been amazing to share it. Just a part of your story, and I'm literally at the end of this show quite stunned.
Thanks for having me, Damien. I'm so glad that Brozo connected us. I'm really appreciative.
Yeah, he's a great man. Look, again, like I said, narrated show notes at the start. Thank you for talking about your book and all the amazing openness you've had there. And I'm going to put your email, if it's still okay. I know we had said it
Yeah,
in
sure.
communicated back and forth, and put your email in the show notes, possibly.
Yep.
So listeners and viewers, look out for that if you'd like to contact Renee as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Damien. Great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks to you too, Renee. I'll hit pause. We'll have a quick chat.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottodieguy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situational awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.